we are going to talk about Volume 2 of Star Wars Visions this
Ooh, baby.
week. Uh, we're not huge Fast and Furious people. It's fine, but I haven't seen one in a long time, so we're skipping Fast X and doing this
Yeah.
instead. Yeah, some of them are good, some of them I don't like. I haven't seen 8 or 9, so I didn't see them.
Yeah. I think the last one I watched was that one that we watched in the theater together where he
Mm-hmm.
busted out of the cast
Yeah.
just by flexing. That was legendary. I
Yes.
don't know how they could ever top that. So,
That was 7, and that's the last one that Paul Walker was in because he died during production of that. And
right.
I think Fast and Furious is so interesting to me because it is the type of dumb schlock that I would normally love, but it
Hmm.
just does not click for whatever reason. And I think it's just the amount of ego going on behind the scenes that just makes it all
Mm.
like not work for me.
Yeah, for sure. I get that. I think there's like other aspects to it too, like the reality breaking really quickly in those films where all of a sudden it's like, yo, he just got hit by a car and now he's standing back up and he's walking normally. Like,
Yeah.
that kind of bullshit, but
I have seen it
whatever.
described as like it's a live action anime, which in that
Mm.
context, I'm like, okay, that kind of works. But
Yeah,
I don't
I get
know.
that.
Just like hearing everything about behind the scenes with Vin Diesel and The Rock and how they can't be hit more than they hit other people. And it's just like the never. But
Drama.
yeah, enough of that. This is the second season of Lucasfilm's animated anthology series, Visions, which showcases short films from animation studios around the world. And once again, I think this format has yielded a really wide variety of stories set within the Star Wars universe as a framework. But we get 9 episodes and we get 9 very distinct short films. So yeah,
Hmm.
what are some of your initial non-spoilery thoughts on Visions 2?
Yeah, I love it. We talked about the first season of Visions. Was that a year ago right now, or is that
Yeah,
longer? I
something like
feel like.
that.
But yeah, we reviewed that the original first season. So if you are a fan of Visions, I encourage you to go check that out. But
Hmm.
I think a lot of the same notes that I brought up in that or that we brought up in
Yeah,
that episode kind of resonate here as well. They carry over because it is pretty much like the same format, like you were
it's
saying. It's
more of
nine
that. Yeah.
episodes. Yeah, it's more of that. It's more of what we're used to with the first season. And I think Visions, it just brings such a rich diversity to the oftentimes restricted world of Star Wars, or the
Hmm.
confined world of Star Wars, to better put it. But like you were saying, we get to see these stories from around the world, these stories that are told from unique perspectives, different cultures, and they're coupled with these unique art styles and these diverse narrative directions. So I think it Visions gives creators an opportunity to break out of the typical tropes and formulas of Star Wars. Like, you still see that sprinkled through,
Hmm.
like some of the lore, the technology, the force builders, the narrative tropes, and everything. But it's very fresh. It feels very original, and I feel like the messages of these short films, they do resonate with a lot of people. And I think at least for younger generations, I think there's a lot of stories from Volume 2 here that will resonate with them too.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, what are your thoughts, Dylan?
Yes, I love this like I love the first season, and it's kind of becoming clear to me that this is the type of storytelling philosophy I'd like to see applied to Star Wars as a whole a little bit
Mm,
more. Um, Red Letter Media said this a long time ago, where like what you can do in Star Wars is very narrow in scope, right? It's
yes.
like Jedi or smugglers or war, and that has been true for a long time. But when you approach it like Visions approaches it, I don't think that's as true. Uh, and I get the appeal of this really tightly interconnected canon. There are certain elements of that that are satisfying, of course.
Yes.
However, I would like to see Star Wars sometimes sort of become just a canvas for creators to no, like, sorry for this, but share their vision, just like let
Yeah.
them create. There are some basic framework things of Star Wars that are always going to be present, but let them do whatever they want with that. It doesn't have to be connected to anything at all, you know? And as with season 1, there are a few episodes here that I feel like could or should be jumping off points for like a feature film or a series of
Ooh, yes.
adventures. Um, you know, like there were a couple in season 1 and there are a couple here, and it almost feels like this animation studio is like pitching a concept to Lucasfilm. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind seeing some of these become feature films, or I guess not and or just like have Visions episodes in the future be an hour or more sometimes, if that's what the story calls for, you know.
Oh yeah, I think that there were like a few episodes, like we'll get into it in spoilers, but some episodes I think could have benefited from a little bit more time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because these are really quick, like these are 15 to 20-minute episodes, and I think some of them could have gone even further. Like, yeah, got to 30 minutes even. Like that would have been fine with me. That would give you even more time to like build out these worlds and really like breathe in them. But yeah, I would agree that overall I have very positive first impressions on these episodes, just like season 1. And I remember from our season 1 review that there were some where I would just kind of said no, like on a few of them, like you're like 4 stars or so like that, like not even close to 10. But overall, I think I can be harsh sometimes, but not all the time. And I think with this season, I think overall it felt stronger because I think that they saw what resonated in the first season. They came back and they just kept going with what worked, I think the best, and I think that shows.
Right. But and that's something that's going to happen though when you allow for a more diverse, creative, creator driven approach. It's like not every story is going to work for you, but in a format like this, that's okay because it's one part of this bigger whole. And that's really the case with Star Wars more generally, right? Like almost no one likes all of the movies, right? Everybody's got their ones they like and ones they don't, and whatever, you know, like some of them are disappointing. That's so true. That means a lot of things to different people, you know.
It absolutely, yeah, and I think that I'm glad you brought that up because I was just thinking that too. Like, there's people who love the prequels, and there's so many people who hate the prequels, you know. And I think that's one of the things that's great about Visions is that you can pick and choose and find stories that resonate with you and that you relate to more than others, because there's 18 of these original short stories now that are set within the universe. They're self-contained. They're not canonical or anything, as far as I can tell. They're just kind of
matter
fun.
If they are,
yeah,
right?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, like reading the story synopses before putting notes together, just because it's been a while since I watched it. I want a refresher. I'm like, it's saying the time periods in which all these stories were taking place. I'm like, oh, I didn't know this one was in the High Republic. Like, okay, I guess that's cool, but it doesn't.
Yeah, wow.
It's like you can just watch. Well, it's not all of them. It's just it's like you can watch and not have prior knowledge. It's like a more impressionist is not the right word, but it's like you get the ingredients of Star Wars sort of thrown in, and then it's just a story, you know?
Yes. Yeah. And I think to go off your point earlier, that kind of piggybacking off of Red Letter Media too, a little bit, but you know, I think one of the things that Star Wars suffers from is that it has these similar narrative structures, or these buckets of content or categories, you know, where you have a story about a Sith or an Inquisitor hunting down a Force user, or it's another rescue operation. And those stories work fine. And there are some in this series that fall into those buckets of, okay, we've seen this story before. Can we get something new? And I think the series still does a very good job with that. But, you know, I think what I would like to see is like a story that's even more original, is kind of out there, and it's more of like a challenge to creative directors, and even just like stuff that like you could watch it and it doesn't need a Sith or a Jedi or like a bunch of Star Wars technology to tell you that this is a Star Wars story.
Okay.
You know, it could just be kind of set within the universe, and because the bad guy doesn't always need to be like an antagonist walking down the hallway with a red lightsaber coming to kill you, you know, kind of deal. There's this I haven't finished season 2 of The Bad Batch, but I just kind of want to reference it real quick because there's an episode in it, I think it was episode 13, I looked it up beforehand, called The Flood. Okay. And basically the premise of the episode is our heroes, they go to this planet where it's just like an entire water planet with islands, and they're hanging out with this community. They're just chilling,
Mhm.
and all of a sudden a tsunami happens, and it's an island, so everyone's got to get to higher ground.
Right.
So that's the crux of the story, really, is just escaping from a natural disaster. And after I watched that episode, I thought to myself, wow, that's something we haven't seen in Star Wars before.
Yeah.
An actual story about a natural disaster. Like, the antagonist of the story wasn't a Sith, it wasn't a Force user, it had nothing to do with the Force. It was
Mhm.
just, here's a community on an island, and all of a sudden they have to come together to escape this flood. And I think Visions echoes some of that here,
Mhm.
where they do branch out and they find new ways to explore the Star Wars universe. But I think, like, a challenge that they could even challenge themselves further to develop even better content for season 3 could just be, how couldn't you tell a story in the Star Wars universe without being too on the nose? How
Mhm.
can you, like, create a story without, like, making the antagonist just the Sith or
Or the
just the dark
Empire.
side? Yeah, or the Empire. Like,
Mhm.
there's other ways that you can explore this universe and round it out a little bit more.
Yeah. And sometimes your villain can just be a ladder climbing incel, like in
Yeah.
Ant.
Yep, that's fine too.
Yeah, but I think part of that is on Lucasfilm, but part of that is also on the fandom, because there
Mhm.
are lots of sections of the fandom who are actively cheering for Star Wars to get smaller in scope. It's like,
Hmm.
yay, Luke Skywalker again, Han Solo again. The Mandalorian is meeting all of the cartoon characters now. Oh my God, it's so fun. Our live action characters are becoming cartoon characters because they're not being played by people anymore, but by AI. Like
Yeah.
it's like we as fans need to celebrate when something is pushing the boundaries of what Star Wars is, even if it doesn't totally click for us. Like with
Yeah.
Visions, not all the episodes are going to click for you, and that's okay because they're pushing the boundaries and trying something new. And I think Lucasfilm, I've talked about this before, but like got scared when there was backlash to The Last Jedi, which pushed the
Yeah.
boundaries in like pretty small ways if you really think about it, and people lost their fucking minds and are still upset about it. So it's like, as fans, be adults about this a little bit. But Visions, I think, once again, I'm loving this show. I think it's really great. It's, like I said, what I want to see more of in Star Wars,
Mhm.
just creative ideas being thrown out there and, celebrated.
Yeah.
So
And these creative ideas, they have some good messages to them, like some neat themes, and
mhm.
you know, we'll get into that and then spoilers in just a second, but that's the great part about Star Wars, is there's always some good messaging behind them. And these are really original stories too, so we applaud them for that, and
Yep,
it's just nice to see a diversity of animation studios too.
true. You want to do spoilers?
Let's do it. Let's jump
All
on in.